Hello and welcome to today's painting demonstration. My name is Leah and I teach acrylic painting on this channel. I am going to show you today how to paint some afternoon lit snow. Maybe we're going to dap a little bit of light onto the forest floor here. I'm going to explain my whole process along the way, and if you're interested in any of the materials that I'm using in this painting, I use a pretty limited palette and limited amount of brushes. A very slimmed down amount of painting supplies, so feel free to check out what I'm using there. I am still testing some new brushes, although I am liking them, I'm not gonna lie. They are from Craftimo and they are supporting the Sarah Burns studio. So when I am fully convinced, I'll put those on my material list as well. For now, I'm going to start with my underpainting. I grabbed my large Princeton filbert brush and I'm going to put some water in it. I'm going to start with my darker values. You can see I have a pretty detailed drawing. That's after I do some work laying out a thumbnail. So I take the reference and I kind of reorient some things for better composition and structure. I draw it out really small. Sometimes I do that a couple of times until I really like where something is going. And then I transfer the drawing onto the paper. And sometimes a few more things get added along the way, because when you change scale, things are a little bit different. Empty spaces are a little bit more empty. Then what I do is the reference photo becomes more of a reference for color and value and less for the composition of the scene. The middle trees are going to be lit by the sun, and I'm going to try to make it cut down into the forest like a triangle in the middle, since the eye is going to go back into that light. And the glowing distant hills will just be peeking out in that area as well. So the goal is going to be to move the viewer's eye to the distant plane. This part of the process, I don't have to be incredibly accurate. This is just the underpainting. It's going to guide us with our values, and it's just the foundation. On paper, acrylic paint dries incredibly quickly, so you can move pretty quick with your layers. This is a hot press color paper block by Fluid, I believe. If that's not the brand, then that is the text that is on the front of the package. So the focal point is going to be where these light trees kind of come up against the silhouetted tree. That's where your eye is going to come. So since I want to convey the light coming down this way, I might put some dabbling right here. Okay, that's it for our underpainting. Now let's put the sky gradient in. I'm going to put aside this brush, we're done with it. Now I'm going to pick up my small filbert. This one's also from Princeton. I've been using these for a while. I even replaced this one. After an incredible amount of brush mileage, so don't let that dissuade you. It's also not an expensive brush. It's the number 8 filbert. Alright, so right now I'm mixing cerulean blue and titanium white. And I'm going to make myself a gradient here, a little darker on the blue side and then a little lighter on the white side. This is often where I'll mix my sky gradient. It's no accident where I put the colors on the palette. Alright, so with the darker blue color, I'm going to start in the corners. A lot of this is going to get covered up with branches. I'm just going to paint up to the where I have the plans for the trees. Not common that I have a cloudless sky, but there's going to be so much else happening in this scene that I don't think we're going to need any additional lead lines or interest in the middle. This blue gradient is also going to shift into something more warm at the horizon line. I'm using the side of this brush to loosely lay paint down. I'm also going to progressively pick up lighter and lighter blue as I'm moving down the painting. And there's a good reason why I'm using a filbert instead of a flat here, because I use a lot of flat brush to make stylistic painterly marks, but I would rather go with a dry brush transition with paintbrush strokes going every which way in the sky. I don't spend a lot of time trying to get smooth sky transitions. It gives it kind of an impression of distant or light clouds in the background, maybe a little bit of atmosphere. I think living on the coast kind of gives you that kind of sky quite a bit, that atmosphere in the distance. Now if you find that putting down paint is actually lifting, instead of going over, just go ahead and either work on another area or take a little break. I have to remind myself to do this quite a bit. Okay, now that sky's getting a little bit lighter again. I'm not worrying about the overlap onto the tree shapes. No big deal. I can see where they are supposed to be, and I'm going to be defining them in the next step. Alright, I'm going to do a good job of rinsing out my brush right in this moment. I'm going to let all that stuff dry. I'm going to add the Horizon Glow. Okay, so a little bit of titanium white, tiny amount of cadmium light. And just right along where that sky color is almost white, I'm just gonna scrub this on. Just a little bit of overlap. Not enough to make it green. Okay, and I'm feeling the need to go a little bit peach. So I'm just going to barely touch the side of the cadmium red, and then bring that over to the yellow and white mixture. Maybe a little bit more. It's a very, very strong color. It's a high tinting strength. Okay. Added a little bit more titanium white to that peach color, and I'm just gonna drag it across the foreground, maybe a little bit more white. Want it to be a little bit brighter than the color we have down there now. Alright, so there's a little bit of peaking distant mountain in this, and I'm going to handle that next because all this branch work is just going to go right over the top of that. We are doing kind of a paint from back to front. So I'm going to put aside that other filbert brush. We're done with him, and I'm going to pick up my 1/4 inch flat. I think I have a 1/4 inch flat in the Craft-A-Mo too, except for look how much, which is brand new, right? Look how much smaller it is than the one I'm currently using. I mean, dramatically. This I'm convinced that's 1/4 inch at the base of the ferrule right there. But this one looks like maybe 3/8. I don't know. Actually, 3/8 would be bigger, right? This looks quite a bit smaller. So, interesting. I do use it. I like it quite a bit. Alright, that distant mountain, we're going to start with cerulean blue. And I'm just going to pull a little bit of quinacridone magenta on the side there. A magical color. Maybe a little bit of white. It's a little too dark in value. And I'm just going to drag that down. I need to mix a little bit more of that paint, so I'm doing that now. It's almost like a lavender, really light lavender. I think that's probably about as much as the background reveals itself. Maybe I'll add a little bit more negative shapes after the tree work goes in. You know, just like the other tree painting or tree and snow painting that we did, there was just a little bit of a glow, a pink glow on the tippy top of their horizon, and I just took a little bit of transparent magenta and drew a line. I felt like it added a lot. Now I'm going to clean out my brush and just blend the bottom edge. Okay. Now I see that our yellow and white mixture did get a little bit green. So I'm just going to go over that a little bit more. Now we're getting some haze. And this is with the filbert brush, picking that back up to just kind of fix the sky a little bit. Okay, I'm liking that quite a bit better. It just needed a little bit more paint on there. Okay, putting that paintbrush back down. I think it'd probably be a good idea to do the snow before we hit up the trees, because there is no snow on the trees, so I'm not going to have to worry about that. I'm picking up that flat brush again, and I'm going to need to mix a good amount of cool white. I'm using the cerulean blue and a touch of the quinacridone magenta. Make it a little bit more purple. And it's going to be a little bit more white in the foreground and a little bit darker blue into the background. And I'm going to try to avoid those funny shapes that I've left out for myself. I don't know if they're rocks or debris or sticks or what have you. Just kind of mixes it up. Now I'm going to drag the paintbrush across, but I'm going to leave out some spots, and that's going to be our dappled light. There's not a lot of water in the brush right now. Close to none. And that dry brushing lends itself to snow, to chunky snow. Alright, moving into the sides and the background, so I'm picking up a little bit darker blue-white. And for that very farthest area, I'm going to put just the smallest amount of ultramarine blue. And I wanted to saturate it just a little bit, so I'm just going to touch the burnt sienna and mix that in as well. where I'm going to give my brush a good rinse. And then I'm going to incorporate a little bit of the lighter snow into the middle of that distant area. Give it a little bit of dimension. And that'll lead your eye all the way back. As the paint dries, it's going to have a little bit of shift in color, so you may need to make adjustments. It's totally normal. A lot of times you will put, if you have water in your brush and you're using white, then it will become even more transparent as it dries. Okay, now it's time to do some background trees. Okay. Burnt sienna, cadmium yellow. That's our sun glowy color, but I'm just going to put a touch of cerulean blue in there. That's going to give us an earthy, glowy green. And I'm going to start back here. I'm going to try to be kind of loose. Go all the way up to the top of the tree shape. These are pine trees, so they're going to have a lot of air in the branch work. They're going to be mostly upright. I'm just going to put a little bit of that color up in the tops of these trees. We're going to paint right over it, but it's going to peek through. Now I'm going to make a darker color green. I'm going to start with ultramarine and burnt sienna. And just a little bit of cad yellow. We want an earthier, darker, earthier color. I'm going to start with these trees here and just work from the bottom up, using less and less as I get up to where the light is hitting them. Don't worry if you are making your trees really, really bushy. You can negative paint some more structure into their lower branches or even upper branches later on to give them a little bit more of a interesting form. And go a little bit darker on the right side than on the left side because the light is coming in at just a little bit of an angle, or at least we're going to pretend it is for our uses. I'm making sure to rotate the angle of my flat brush depending on what kind of shape I need. I'm really liking the shapes that I have for this tree. That's great. That's probably going to be the focal point too. Okay, now every other tree is darker. Might darken the base of these guys too. We'll see what happens when it dries and we get the other values in. Thinking though, while I have this color on my brush, I'm just gonna loosely put it over some of our ground debris. That's a good color for that. That's a good value for that. Okay, so in that same area, mixing zone, more ultramarine blue, more burnt sienna. This time, no cadmium yellow. You could even put a little bit of quinacridone magenta in there if you wanted to hit a little bit of purple. So as long as it's the darkest value, that'll be fine. So I'm just going to start with the trees on the left and then work my way to the right, and that's mostly so that I don't put my hand in it and anything wet. This tree here is more of a snag. And if you don't feel comfortable doing this part with a flat, you can use a rigger or a script or liner, something on the smaller side. You do want the bottom of your tree trunk to be a little bit thicker than the top, so it will look a little odd, especially on pine trees if you don't have something like that happening. Gonna add a little bit of water to my brush for some better bristle control. And then here comes some branches. These are pine trees, so you could try to let the bristles flare out a little bit. That would be a nice effect. Alright, using the small side of my flat brush to draw the trunk of this next tree. And then I'm going to try to keep it loose. Zigging and then zagging down this tree. Using different angles. To make some different shapes. You want it to be balanced, but not too symmetrical. These are pine trees though, so they're, you know, when you look at them, they're pretty darn symmetrical. But the ones you end up looking at more are not. Gonna need to mix more of that darkest value color. So that is ultramarine blue, burnt sienna with a touch of the magenta. You want it to be, these trees to be a little bit more opaque towards the center. The center of the tree, that is. Especially where the trunk would be. Be sure not to add any bird or sky holes right where the trunk would be. All right, now to the right side. Sharp side of the flat, and going down, down, down. The smallest touches on this paper right now. Nice and airy, and connecting some of those areas with some little branch marks. I'm going to add a little supporting character here, pointing up at the focal point. It's really big, but it's going to break up some of that monotony in the middle foreground, or not foreground, it's still the midground. Right there. And then maybe a little snag on this side. Leaning in just a bit. Subtle, doesn't need to have too many branches. I'm gonna add a little bit more foliage next to the trunk on this one, although I'm really enjoying its form. Okay, now this last one on the right. Okay, let's see what I can do here on this last big tree. Branches can be a little bit bigger. Brush strokes can be a little bit more gestural, I guess. If you feel like you need a little bit more control or a little less dry brush look, then you can add a little bit of water to your brush. You can always do another layer if it's not quite opaque enough. This branch was going to come all the way down. I'm not sure if I like it or not. I might put some color behind there. A little bit of negative painting to help that part out. I do like this empty space here, but I'm going to add a little bit of some little bird perches. Okay, looking good. Now I'm gonna make sure there aren't any areas that need more paint. Dried a little too transparent for me. Maybe a couple places need a little bit more. Pine. More pine. Dabbling a light on the forest floor is a lot more subtle in this one than on the last one, but the power of the sun is also more subtle. I don't know if it needs help or not. Decide at the end. For now, I'm going to add some negative shapes for our trees. I don't think I kept any of that distant mountain lavender, so I'm just remixing that. What's nice about only having 7 colors out is things are pretty easy to remember. How you mixed them, how you got there. I'm using the brush from the quarter inch brush from the Craft-A-Mo because it is sharper and more exacting. It's a very nice bounce to it. I'm edging out those little bursts of light because I don't need your eye to be drawn over to this side. painting. Sculpting the edge of that trunk right there. Okay, I feel like that'll do it. I'm also going to incorporate this color, because it's just ever so slightly a little different, into these trees back here. Just a little bit. It's pretty subtle. But since it's a cool color going over light tones, it's going to be pretty magical looking, I think. It's going to give us some dimension and forest layering. Don't mind your trunks, your tree trunks. As far as this down here, I believe that would be more of a green. So I'm going to grab some of that. Kind of tone down how bright that is right there. There we go. Now I'm going to add a little bit of negative painting up to top of that tree. That's just cerulean blue and titanium white. Okay, and now over to the left side. Just keep in mind, if you're going to go cut in closer to your horizon line, you're going to need to use a lighter and warmer blue. believe this is where the magic happens, so take your time. This is the fun part. Gives you the stained glass look. Okay, now I'm feeling like we really could use some of that dappling in the foreground, just leading back. So I'm hoping if I pick up some white and a little bit of peach over here, and ever so slightly. Over the areas where it's already happening. I'm just going to drag over that a little bit more warmth. I don't think I'm going to touch these dark shapes. I like them nice and loose. I am going to drag a little bit of the dark blue shadowed snow over the base of the trees. Let's just set them in the scene a little bit better. I'm just going to dry brush blend the bottom of that down. Went a little bit too far there. But if you accidentally get some very freshly applied paint over something that you know is completely dry, you can just rinse your brush or grab a different one that's clean, put a little bit of water on there and just lift it right up. It's like it didn't even happen. It's the closest thing you're going to get to an undo. You just have to be very, very quick. Okay, I am analyzing the final scene we got here. Your eye definitely goes back to this area right here. Now I feel like if I'm being a little bit fussy, I could make just the smallest shapes right here up against what would be the trunk. Making that just a little bit lighter. Putting a little bit more air in that tree. Since that is the focal point, I will apply the effort on that spot. Okay, I'm thinking I'm pretty happy with that. Well, thank you so much for hanging out, and I hope that you were able to get some creative inspiration or paint along or pick up some tips or what have you. Tomorrow, or I'm sorry, not tomorrow. Look forward to a lot of new painting content in the new year, especially some more thorough tips and tricks as I go through my acrylic painting book. Each chapter will be another video with actual editing, so that'll be something, that'll be new. And then there will also be some more plein air painting with acrylic and also gouache. So look forward to that. Thank you so much for hanging out, and until next week, happy painting.